Game 3, look, we've talked about it ad nauseum. This potentially could be a sweep. VGK after that first period was the much better team down in Florida. You get the empty netter with Florida, forces overtime. They beat off the power play, and they obviously get to Game 4 up 2-1, but it was dominance by VGK in Game 4.
Yeah, Game 4 was all Vegas until that last 10-minute stretch in the third period where Florida really started to push and press. I really thought the Panthers were going to tie it up because, like I said before, every time you count this team out, they always find a way to prove you wrong. So Matthew Tkachuk had that last-second effort to try to get one tied, and Aiden Hill came up huge. I mean, Vegas' overall team defense top to bottom is what separates them. They're so much stronger, I think, just overall as a cohesive unit than Florida is. So if Florida is going to find a way to come out and win tomorrow night, it all starts with Sergei Bobrovsky. I think we've talked about it a lot where Aiden Hill doesn't have to be at his best for Vegas to win because they're so sound as a team. But if Florida is going to win, Bobrovsky has to be at 110%.
Patrick, if Florida pulls this game out tomorrow night, this thing gets very interesting. It could get dicey for Vegas, and then you wind up potentially with a Game 7. Anything can happen.
Bobrovsky, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, boys. He was pulled in Game 2. He was bad in Game 2 as far as expected and what he gave up, but very good to great in Game 3. And he wasn't terrible in Game 4. He's just constantly under duress. No, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first goal, obviously, it's a breakaway. Not much he can do on that. Second goal, it's a really strong shot from Chandler Stevenson once again. The third one is a tough rebound. William Karlsson has a free second there to put it in the empty net. Those are goals you can't really necessarily blame a goalie for. If anything, maybe the third one because the rebound control, he could have maybe smothered it more or directed it to the corner. But Bobrovsky's been as good as he possibly can be, and he's going to have to be even better than that if they're going to win 3 straight games against this unbelievable Vegas team.
Obviously, VGK is a big-time favorite coming up tomorrow night. They adjusted that total. It's 5.5, just like in Game 4, down to 5.5. You got to pay a little juice if you want to go over. But let's talk about betting this game. Obviously, I mentioned the price, $1.66. We're showing $1.75 on the Golden Knights. Come back the other way with the Panthers at plus 155. We're showing 6, but you can find 5.5s in the market. So I'm going to let you run away with the handicap here and also talk about betting the total there, Johnny.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me back for a second segment. I didn't know the first one was a tryout, but
you made it. You made it, kid.
If I'm taking the total, I'm definitely going with the under, especially in a closeout game. In elimination games, it's always tighter defensively. Both teams don't want to take as many risks, especially in the first period too. That first period under, the 1.5 is certainly juicy. I've been on those the entire playoffs. Vegas has actually their first period overs have been very hot, but in this kind of game, this kind of situation, like I said, it's a closeout game. The first period is going to be very intense, a lot of nerves. I expect it to be super physical, and typically when the games are more physical, the goal scoring is lacking a little bit. So I would definitely lean toward that under. Like I said before, Sergei Bobrovsky has to be at his absolute best, and Vegas has to make ssure they keep a very tight check on Florida because the Panthers are going to throw everything they can. Their season's on the line at Aiden Hill. I think this game's going to be like a 2-1, 1-0, even a shutout. Very low-scoring game, very tightly played battle.
Yeah, Patrick, Johnny just mentioned that first period goal over. We saw, I think, in 12 out of 13 games in a row for Vegas gone over. You score a goal less than 2 minutes in, you figure the game's going to get over. That first period total doesn't get there. Johnny, I thought both teams, particularly Florida, did a nice job of staying out of the penalty box in game number 4. Do you think they can continue to do that? Because I think that's their best shot. If they allow Vegas opportunities on the power play, their PK hasn't been that strong. Vegas scored 6 power play goals. Yeah,
Vegas has been money on the power play, and that's been the biggest difference in this series, that Florida hasn't been able to score once on their man advantage. In the first couple of games, we saw the Panthers just taking like 86 penalty minutes, I think, in game 2. It was absolutely ridiculous. I actually looked over to my friend, Mike Grinnell, the producer of Spin Chicklets. I looked at him, and I was like, has Florida not taken a penalty in this game yet, like halfway through? Because I was just so used to them taking so many. And he was like, no, I really don't think there's been like any penalties in this game so far. And, typically in a game like this, the refs don't want to decide the outcome of the Stanley Cup, right? So I think they put their whistles away. If anything, maybe we'll see 3 or 4 calls. But if the game does get out of hand, then I think that's where it gets out of control, right? If Vegas takes a 3-0 lead, Florida's just going to be ridiculous and, stir it up after the whistles and whatnot. So the key for Florida is definitely staying out of the box. But also, if they don't score that first goal, I'll be very concerned because if Vegas scores the first goal, they're going to shut it down and they're going to be so strong on their home ice with the home crowd that is absolutely nuts at the Fortress.
Well, VGK, just too much depth. You mentioned Chandler Stevenson with the 2 goals. I think Karlsson had the 3rd. And then you think about Tkachuk. He's the heartbeat of that Panthers team. His status is unsure for Game 5. I'm sure he'll give it a go, but he's certainly banged up here, Johnny.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that guy's been going balls to the walls for 2 months now. I mean, the way they battle, and this Florida team hasn't had it easy by any means. They've been playing playoff hockey not only for 2 months, but they've been playing it for 4 months because they were battling toward the end of the regular season to get themselves into the playoffs. So this Florida Panthers team has been going nonstop, literally for almost 4 months. So I got to imagine there's going to be a laundry list or CBS receipt of injuries about the Florida Panthers after the series ends. And Matthew Tkachuk is certainly, when you watch him, you could tell he's banged up, but he's a warrior and he's going to keep battling. And I don't see any scenario where he doesn't play in this game.
You mentioned they were fortunate enough that Pittsburgh had a bad loss down the stretch to be able to get into the postseason, Patrick, and they've taken advantage of their opportunity. You know, you want to seize any opportunity you have in life, and this team has done absolutely just that. When you look at this Panthers team, you mentioned Bobrovsky's got to play well. Who else for you needs to step up if they're going to have a chance to be able to force a game back in Sunrise?
Well, for me, it all starts with the captain. That's Sasha Barkov. He scored that goal in the third period to get them back in the game, make it 3-2. And he's been a little bit quieter, I think, in this series, but he's a dominant NHL player. He's one of the most underrated players in the entire league. And if the Panthers are going to move on with Matthew Tkachuk being hurt as well, it's got to be Barkov that leads the way. He is their overall best player. I know everyone is very high on Tkachuk right now with the postseason he's had, but when you really look at this team, Barkov is that 200-foot guy, very sound defensively, very strong offensively, can shoot the puck, can make plays. He does it all, and I think if it goes to Game 6, it starts with Barkov.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.